Here's something that came up on a recent live stream. In case you didn't know, if you're a Studio One Plus member, we do a monthly live stream, that is Gregor and myself, where we critique and listen to your songs. So you have a chance to get your song heard by us and a lot of other folks. Check it out, links in the description. But this has come up fairly regularly, and we talked about it again on last month's live stream. And the idea and the concept is Headroom, and it has to do with... Actually, let me just show it to you. So here is, I'm just going to hit play on a mix, and you don't even have to hear it right now. Metering, I have a love-hate relationship with metering. So we can look at this. I like to set it to the FFT setting so we can see all the different frequencies bouncing around. And if we hover right about here, we can see that the darker, bolder white line is roughly kind of what flat looks like. And what we can notice here, specifically just by looking at it, something should jump out to you. And that something should be this right here. So from like 40 hertz and below, so this is 40 hertz, we have a whole lot of volume happening here. Now, the reason I said I have a love-hate relationship with metering is because it can be tempting to just do everything with your eyes instead of your ears. And you say, oh, this EQ curve looks wrong, ergo I will fix it. Not a musical way to work. However, especially when it comes to mastering, but this certainly applies to mixing, this is instructive. So I want to do something here. I want to just, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put multiband dynamics on this song. And I'm going to set it to, we're going to edit all relative. I'm going to set it to as 1-to-1 ratio, so it's not doing anything to the sound. And then I'm going to set this lower band to, let's set it to 40 hertz. Okay, so the human hearing, we can hear technically from 20 hertz up to 20,000 hertz. Most folks aren't hearing that high, or that low either for that matter. But 40 hertz and below is, for the most part, not a terribly musical area. Unless you're making really heavy, like club music that needs to just slam subwoofers, there's not much of a reason for most of us average folks to have much, if any, information down here below 40. Now, 50 to 80, yeah, absolutely. That's like kick drum, hit you in the chest. But 40 and below, it starts to get, at some point, below 40, you start to realize there's not much musical and useful there. So I'm going to hit solo on this lowest band here. So now we're only listening to everything below 40 hertz. Now, of course, there's some roll off there because it's like a sloped filter. But check out, if I go back to the beginning, check out how much volume we have just listening to stuff below 40. Here's what it sounds like if you're wondering. If you're on a phone, I bet you didn't even hear that. I cranked it as loud as I could. It's not terribly audible. I've got the PreSonus 6-inch Scepter monitors, and they produce it, but not super loud. If I had bigger monitors and a subwoofer, then I would hear this whoop, whoop, whoop thing. But there's nothing musical there. I would say, my opinion is there's nothing much musical there. But look what's happening to the volume. Just in this mix, just the stuff below 40 hertz is giving us an average of up to -12 or peaking at -9 volume. What does that mean? That means that the rest of our mix is competing with this. We're starting with two hands tied behind our back when we go to do something like mastering, because the limiter, this limiter, check it out, it's already starting to do some limiting, or just about, like there's nowhere to go. And the rest of the song needs to come up in volume, but we've got so much here that's just in the sub 40 range. So the point here is that if you're not careful, you may not even hear that sub 40 on your monitors or your headphones, but be sure to check to see if it's there, because it could be producing a whole lot of extra sound that A, you can't hear, which means B, it's not necessary for your song, but C, it's taking up all the headroom in your master. Why does that matter? Other than the fact that, okay, Joe said that it matters. The reason that matters is that it's a couple of things. First of all, you're not going to be able to push the volume of everything else very much, because we're already pretty much as loud as we can get just with the stuff below 40. So your masters will end up being either a lot quieter than you could make them, or every time you try to push the volume, the limiter just goes nuts because the limiter is going to kind of favor the low end information. The limiter is going to respond to that big low frequency energy, which means you're going to have over limiting, excessive limiting because of how much low end is there. So you're either going to be too quiet or you're going to be too overly limited, and there's not really a middle ground. But if you take care of this with something like, for example, we could use Pro EQ, and we could do something like, we can even use the linear phase one here at 50 hertz, for example. Something like that would help. Or if you want to get more surgical, you could use this one and dial it in exactly to 40. Adjust as you go steep, it can cause some phase issues and stuff, but something like 12 or 24 I feel okay using. And then if we hit play on that, even like not listening to anything, just looking at what's happening, we've taken this volume down a tremendous amount because we've just rolled off all that excessive craziness that was going on. Now we have headroom to work with. And the other piece of this, if you're listening to your mix on smaller speakers, all that extra low energy is that speaker's going to try to reproduce it, bless its heart, even though it can't, and that's going to take up all the headroom of the amplifier in the speaker as well. So it's going to be essentially clipping, trying to reproduce this low frequency stuff that you can't hear and it can't reproduce, but it's going to make the rest of the mix not sound as good. So this gets super technical. It reminds me of hearing stories about folks who would master to vinyl, where you couldn't have too much low end on vinyl or the needle would literally skip out of the groove. We're in the same ballpark here, only with digital we can technically have as much low end as we want because there is no needle to skip, but we should probably still make sure that we don't have excessive low end because it's going to eat up all of that extra headroom that would better be served for stuff we're going to actually hear. Hope that was helpful. I know this gets more tweaky than maybe I normally want to get, but it's something that's worth talking about and something that we need to know. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.